Welcome to Behind the Stats with Matt Cross, a podcast taking a deeper dive into the sports stars from around the world so you can get to know the person behind the stats. Behind the Stats is sponsored by Buzz Physique. Use code MATT10 to apply 10% off your orders. And now, here's your host, Matt Cross.
Okay, brilliant. So thank you to everyone for joining us. Welcome to episode 3 of Behind the Stats with Matt Cross. Today, we are incredibly lucky to have straight off his World Championship gold medal in Budapest, the absolutely brilliant and amazing person, but also a pretty good swimmer. And someone who I consider a very good friend. The person today on the episode is Ben Proud. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. That's very flattering.
No, I couldn't wait to have you on, but I had to let you focus on Budapest a little bit, I suppose.
Of course.
But now you've got a couple of down days before hard work starts for commies. I thought we better get you on.
Yeah. And as you said, I've got the little gold medal here.
So, there it is.
Yeah,
it's a hunky piece of gold, that one.
Yeah, I mean, you'll see it this weekend. It's a special one for sure. So
definitely, we'll dive into it. We'll find out why it sort of meant. Mm-hmm. Maybe that little bit more than some of the others have. So, right, Ben, as you know, it's called Behind the Stats. So I'm going to start off by just reeling off some stats about you, and we can have a little chat into some of these wherever you want to go. So I'll start with, obviously, because it's coming up, I'll start with the Commonwealth Games. At the moment, your success at the Commonwealth Games looks like 1 bronze, 2 silver, and 3 gold. Mm-hmm. Pretty cool to represent England and win some medals for England as opposed to just Britain, or? Yeah,
commies is always a special one, and probably a little bit more so for me because my first real breakout meet was 2014 in Glasgow, and I got 2 golds there, 50 fly, 53, and that was really like that solidified my my foot in the door for my international career.
Yeah,
representing England is brilliant because it happens very rarely. So like you get a bit more patriotic. And flash forward 4 years out in Glasgow, I got disqualified in the 50 fly, which I was hoping to go in there and win to retain both my titles. Held on to the 53, but I lost the 50 fly. So for the past 4 years, it's now been a real drive to kind of maintain my place in the world rankings, to kind of make sure I can be coming into Birmingham again special because it's England, it's a home crowd, and hopefully retain both my titles 8 years after getting onto the scene. So it's a bit of a legacy meet for me. Yeah,
definitely. You're making yourself sound old, mate, but you're only 27 at the moment, turning 28 September, isn't it? So
yeah.
So yeah, no, it's 8 years on, and yeah, wow, 8 years down the line. Where's that time gone? Next meet we'll talk about one that's maybe not gone quite so well for you at the moment, but definitely I'm hoping, touch wood, one you're going to carry on through to the Olympics. How does it feel to be on the biggest stage you can be at the last 2 Olympic Games?
Yeah, I mean, I had a real tough time trying to get to grips with not medaling at the last Olympics. My first Olympics back in Rio 2016 was it was brilliant. I was still young. First Olympics, I came 4th, and that was a brilliant result for me. Had never won an international medal on the world stage, so to have done it there would have been, what I'd probably consider lucky. Mentally, physically, I probably wasn't ready for that just yet. But then 4 years later in 2020, where, that year I had gone a time which would have come second. But obviously you can never talk about that. Like it's racing. We have to do it on the time when it counts. And it was morning, so everything is different. But not to get a medal there was a bit more of a tough one. Because obviously the Olympic medals are still eluding me. And I came off the back of that and had to come to terms with, what if I finish my career without an Olympic medal? Will I be okay with that? Will I not? And I'm for the moment, if that's how it goes, then so be it. I've had a brilliant career otherwise, but I'm definitely eyeing up the Olympics and the podium, and I still have much more to learn. So it's not the end of that chapter.
That's good to hear. And then Europeans, we'll talk European long course. Your stats from those sort of a 3 bronze, 2 silver, 2 gold. Mm-hmm. How different to those that aren't involved? That is a Europeans. How different is the standard Europeans, commies, and sort of the Olympics and Worlds?
Yes, they've all got their own, their own personality, their own type of standard between them. Obviously, Olympics being, what we strive for as a sport, and Olympic sport swimming is. The Olympics is like the be all and end all. If you make it there, you can retire happy.
Yeah.
Worlds is obviously on its level. It's the big one. To do well there means you're top of the world, and that's brilliant. Commonwealth is the fun one. They call it the fun games because Australia, Canada, the Great Britains and other nations. The pressure is a little bit off, but you really enjoy the racing. And Europeans is somewhere in the middle. Like European racing is really tough, and people can come out and do really well. Different events might be lacking, but my European experience over the years it's never really been my full passion to go for it. But my last one, 2018, was actually when I was swimming at my peak. So looking back at it, time-wise, that was a really great meet. But I think over the next couple of years, as I'm getting to more the mature age of sprinting, I want to be able to go to these competitions, and I'm actually currently questioning, do I do Europeans this year or not? It's a tough one. Like I don't know where it sits in my priority list.
Well, it's a tough triple anyway, isn't it, to go from Worlds into a commies and then bounce into a Europeans pretty much immediately. It's a tough ask, and as you said, you're at the more mature age of sprinting now, so the body needs a little bit longer to recover than it used to in sort of 5-6 years ago. So
definitely. But that'll be a decision I make a little bit later on. I've only just a couple of days off after coming back from Budapest, so my priority, like I said before, is Commonwealth Games this year. That's a really, really key one for me.
Yeah, no, definitely. And then we'll talk about Worlds. Obviously, your first World gold medal was in the 50 fly back in 2017. Yeah. Your next sort of world medal was the short course 50 freestyle in Abu Dhabi back in December of 2021. And then you followed it up with 4 or 5 days ago, you won the world long course 50 freestyle in quite sensational fashion. So talk to me about the World Championships as a whole, but then really focus in on this now being the short and long world champion for the 50 freestyle as you are at the moment?
Yeah, so like as I touched on before, that the world champs in the swimming world, I mean, it's on par to the Olympics, apart from obviously there's much more progression to the Olympics, but the standard of racing tends to be just as high because the entire world is there. Everyone has the opportunity to come in and do well. So there always is a lot more pressure going into these meets, and it's a real privilege to be able to do well there. And we'll probably touch on it a little bit later, but that 50 fly, when I won it 5 years ago, was the reason I started swimming. When I started back in Malaysia when I was kind of 15 years old, that was really my only drive, my only motivation to swim was I want to be 50 fly world champion. So doing that was a really special moment. Got my tattoo for it, and it was something that really completed my career. But as a sprinter, we had to, somewhere along the line before, we had to move my focus to the 53, because without the 50 fly in the Olympics, we had to change events and find something else. So the 53 was really my work. It was my job. And it was something I put a lot of attention, a lot of focus into for many years. Yeah. I probably would have never thought I'd be world champion in the 50 freestyle. Definitely not short or long at the same time. But this year, obviously, the stars aligned, the opportunities came, and I was able to take them. So to get the titles in both of those events for freestyle was kind of like it feels good because it's like the hard work is paying off. All the hours of grafting and grinding is, it has something to show for it now, and that is special for sure. Yeah,
no, definitely. And you've mentioned before, like obviously, like the stars aligned for this last gold medal win.
Yeah.
Can you sort of dive into that a little bit deeper, where why it sort of was maybe a little bit more special? Like what stars are we talking?
Well, so many things. Like obviously, this was my 5th World Championships, and I'd missed out on medals and everything on finals in the first one. My 2nd World Champs, I came dead last in both my events. 2017 was brilliant. It's where I won my first gold and won a bronze in the freestyle. And then after that, things started to get a little bit funky in my career, like a couple of injuries, and I started not to perform in the way that I worked for.
Yeah.
And then 2019 World Champs, going in as reigning champion and someone who wants to continue my progression onwards, to take a step back was quite a big hit.
Yeah.
And then following 2019 was 2020. COVID happened. Lots of changes in life. I lost my base in Turkey through lockdown, through COVID as a response to that, and then had to find a new base, and then working with a new team who were phenomenal to rebuild a system and get to a good place for the Olympics was a lot of hard work. And we were there, we were in a really good place, but just for whatever reason, mentally, physically, I couldn't perform at Olympics. So post Olympics, you start to question things like, why am I doing this? Am I really supposed to be a swimmer? Do I continue pursuing this? And the word retirement started to get thrown around quite a bit this year, and I was questioning when is the end of my career. But there was still a deep passion for my sport, and a few opportunities came, and I took the initiative to get up and move back to Turkey by myself with Marco here. I've been self-coaching for the past 2 months now, and we really weren't going in expecting much. We were just trying to get a gauge as to where the body is, how things are going. So to end up at the top of the podium at a meet where, you know, I wasn't expecting too much at all. It was really a special one because I feel like I was almost gifted this medal, and I was gifted it based on the belief that of the people around me, these past, you know, 8-9 months, who've gotten me through a tough time, which we can again go about later, but and got me through this period to the point where I was able to step on and put in the work to then, you know, end up going to win. So like, this medal was a product of their belief in me, and not so much of the work I've done, although it plays a factor obviously, but you know, it was special because it was a team effort, and it was you know, not something I could have done by myself. So very grateful, and to just had the opportunity. So
no, mate, that's amazing. And
that's my emotional.
You know, you know, I've known you a long time, and I know, you know, it's been relatively rough, but you have got, you know, an amazing team behind you. You've got, you know, brilliant parents. Your brother obviously supports you through thick and thin. And I know your work you're doing with Marco out in Turkey is, you know, I think you're the biggest I've ever seen you, and I've seen you pretty big, but you're looking in fantastic shape. So no, that's it's nice to hear that it's a whole team thing and not just a me, which I know you've never been, but it's still nice to hear.
Yeah.
We'll run away from the stats now. I think people have heard enough about, you know, the fact that you're pretty good in the pool, and you're pretty fast. You know, the fastest man in water, both short and long course at the moment. So we'll go more now then into sort of a little bit of your background, your history, little bit let everyone else get to know you. So you were born in London.
Yeah, in London.
But then you were what, 5 or 6 months old when you disappeared out to Malaysia?
5 months old.
Yeah. And then grew up in Malaysia. What was the reason for moving to Malaysia? Was it mum or dad's work, or?
Yeah, so my dad was offered a job to set up to bring across a company. He's an interior designer, and he was offered the job in Malaysia, and they took it. Obviously, with a 2-year-old and a 5-month-old, it was a fairly big step to move out to Malaysia back then. So we moved out there as a family the start of 1995, a good little while ago.
Yeah.
And that's where I spent my entire childhood. I lived there for 17, almost 18 years. My dad is actually still based out there 27 years later. So Malaysia was really, really my home and I still class it as home. A lot, because it was where I went to school. I went to the Alice Smith School for the entire length of time, study out there. You know, that's where I started my swimming career with Francis Q. And if swimming didn't take over my life, you know, probably I would have stayed out there a lot longer. Would have tried to keep myself there as much as I can. So,
do you think it's somewhere you'll go back to if and when retirement does come? Do you think it's somewhere you'll head back out to at some point, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of these things, like when you're growing up somewhere, it holds a very special place, and you know that sometimes changes when you get older and you have to start working and living your own life. But you know, I've only got good memories of Malaysia and the friends I had there, the school, the coaches. So it's always going to be somewhere which was, you know, I have that very special bond to. Whether I live there or not, I'm not too sure. That's a whole world away when I think about retirement. But definitely, like, you know, the last last year or two when I started my swimming career out there, I mean, that really set me on a completely different tangent of life that I wouldn't have probably been on if I was brought up in the UK. And that's, partly because the coach, Francis Q, who kind of spotted me as a swimmer.
Yeah.
Because I can go into this. Being in Malaysia, like the climate is much more appealing to being around the water and spending more time. We go wakeboarding weekends, we'd be at the pool. So it's much more of a water-based life. You enjoy your time around the pool. So I always had a lot of time swimming for fun, for enjoyment. I joined the school team when I was young, like 7 years old. But that was to the extent of every other school team. We did 1 or 2 competitions a year, and it was good fun.
Yeah,
and I always had a big passion for it. And then growing up through the years, like I remember there was a point when I was about 14 where the social aspects of life start to kick in, and all of a sudden swimming takes up a couple of hours a week, and that's you want to spend it another way.
Yeah.
So I was probably going to stop swimming around then, but when I was 15, I had a session with Francis Q, who no one turned up to the pool, just me and another friend, and we had a training session together. And at the end of it, he kind of turned around to me and my mum and said, "If you come under my belt and work with me a little bit, come to training a bit more, like set up a little thing," he said I could become national champion in Malaysia for an age grouper, which as a 15-year-old, like, okay, that's quite cool. See what happens. And sure enough, like, training went from 3 hours a week to 9 hours a week. Started doing mornings for the first time, like at 15, 16. And he had a very, very unique outlook into swimming. He was very, very focused on little things. We were very, very technique orientated in a racing way right from the start. Learning about the fundamentals of the water and how to feel it, how to be a part of it. And within a space of 12 to 16 months, I went from your below average school team swimmer to ending up winning the Malaysian Open against other countries and open at age category at 16. So that's kind of where I decided that swimming could be a career path for me. So without those last 2 years in Malaysia, which put me in that position to say, like, I'm going to move back to Plymouth and start my swimming career, would have never ended up getting me here to eventually winning a couple of medals and being in this position that I'm in now. So so Malaysia was a special place as a childhood, but also it started me on this journey, and it's given me this career that I can be happy with.
Amazing. And are you still in touch with Francis? Is he still around, or?
Yeah, I mean, I still, obviously life takes over and you can't be in touch as much, but I still credit all my success to him and his belief in me. Because it really is one of those things that I didn't see it myself, and he saw something, and him, doing that, it led to this amazing journey. And we had a very special belief that, one day I can be world champion in the 50 fly. And in fact, it was actually his belief in me that started that passion. So that's why I say that 6-year journey from leaving Malaysia to becoming world champion was fueled by his belief in me. As well as other people who came along, like started working with you and John, and became an athlete, and all these things really paid for that medal. But the initial start of the journey was back in Malaysia
with him.
Nah,
brilliant. And then obviously from Malaysia, you've mentioned there you came over to Plymouth. and started working with, obviously with John Rudd being your main coach. Obviously you had Lindsay Dunn as well around coaching. I claim to have no part in any part of your coaching at all, but I was around every now and then. And you obviously also had Paris Payne looking after your sort of gym and land training side of things. So how was that? How did you find that transition, really? Because you always said it was great, but what was really going on in your head in going from Malaysia and this beautiful climate to the not quite so beautiful Plymouth?
Ocean City. Yeah, I mean, like, obviously what I was doing in Malaysia was brilliant in terms of starting that career path. I remember, a couple of months into being in Plymouth, I really felt like I was becoming an athlete. Like I was starting to physically understand the demands of having to train and put in this hard work. And I went from doing 9 hours in the pool a week to doing closer to 22. So it was a massive step up. And also the culture change was very different. Like back in Malaysia, I would train in board shorts and I never wore goggles. I won my first international race, no goggles and a racing suit, but so I came back and I was a big culture shock and having to adjust to things and adjust to a new school and meet new people and understand the demands of real training. So it was a complete journey, and I was in Plymouth for 5 or 6 years. And obviously you mentioned Paris, he came along and completely opened up my eyes to the impact of gym and performance and being a fundamental athlete. And that really, put me in a position where I could then step on later. But yeah, being in Plymouth was tough. Like for sure, we were doing the 4 o'clock wake ups and 2.5 hours of training before school. You would go to school for 6 hours and then you do another 2.5 hours. And during those 2 years, my mind was really set on becoming the best swimmer I can be. So it meant, I was very focused on the task at hand. I was very focused on competitions that were coming, and my mindset, my belief system was in place so that I could kind of really focus everything on swimming and have that real purposeful drive to be a better swimmer and become a better athlete. And over those 6 years, my progression was really quite linear. Every year just got a little bit better. Broke out onto the international scene when I was there and had my first Olympics. So like it was brutal. The work we like real tough work, but without that I wouldn't have been the athlete that I can be today. So yeah, different perspective as to Malaysia compared to Plymouth, but both played equal parts in terms of preparing me to be a swimmer. So
Definitely. And you had obviously the support of Plymouth College. And then you moved on to Marjon University. How was it that how was the school life? How were you balancing that with your swimming, and then again uni life balance with swimming?
Yeah, I mean, with all honesty, my academics definitely took a turn for the worse when I was pursuing my swimming, and for a host of reasons. I think the athletes who can balance being a student and also being a successful athlete, like I take my hat off to them, because it takes some real good organization, effort, like willpower, which it's not that I didn't have, but my only passion was to become a swimmer. And even the choice of subjects I chose to study were based around what I could learn about the body, so biology, PE, psychology. I chose all those just to understand people and myself and how I can apply it to the sport.
Yeah.
Exam wise, I didn't do so well, but I didn't really bother me too much. Like I was so focused and driven to be a swimmer that if I failed a subject, it was okay, so long as I knew I was learning something that I could apply to my sport.
Yeah.
But it was definitely like, it was having that support from Plymouth College and then Marjon. It gave me an opportunity to be in a place where I can swim.
Yeah.
So there was more than just turning up. It was they supplied facilities, the boarding house, the ability to train at that young age, because I think a lot of people between 17 and 19, there's a massive dropout rate, especially in swimming, because to facilitate that next chapter, it takes some belief in you in terms of from the universities or schools to allow you to have that balance and on that way. So it was another part of my life which I'm grateful for, because looking back to it, even though I wasn't fully focused on my studies, it applied that avenue for me to continue my sport in the way that I did.
Yeah, brilliant. And then let's just we'll just delve in a little bit on your relationship with obviously with Lindsay Dunn, and then with John Rudd as sort of your main coaches in the pool in that period in Plymouth. How did they, either together or individually, help you sort of take the steps towards where you wanted to be?
Yeah, so they both played, their different roles, like very different personalities in the way they treated me at different times. But when I first joined Plymouth, I was a complete nightmare, like rocking up in board shorts, no goggles. I even think my first week of training, I wore a racing suit because I just never wore Speedos before. So they were obviously looking at me like, what's this kid doing? Like, this just moved across from Malaysia, like never met him before, like he's a complete mess. But they obviously had some understanding that, they can craft something out of me. And there was a lot of, passion and emphasis on their behalf into me, which, as a 17, 18-year-old, you don't really see that side of things. You see them as a coach and they tell you what to do, but in reality, looking back at it, they were the ones who were making sure I was starting to understand myself and start to get these good habits in place. They were teaching me work ethic. They were teaching me little things that eventually crafted my understanding or my belief as an athlete.
Yeah.
Both in different ways. Obviously, John was being more the head coach for the entire 6 years. Lindsay wasn't around for the full time, but she was much more of a pivotal point at the start, because she was making sure that I was making the right choices, and she was a bit more of like a mother figure in terms of still being disciplined when we need it, but also being caring enough so that I would enjoy the sport to the point where I wouldn't say like I'm done, I need to leave. Like she just kept me always on that line of, no, I'm still here, I can still do it. So
brilliant. No, yeah, definitely both great people, both very inspirational and things, and very lucky to have worked with them, and I'm sure you feel the same way. And then also while you're in Plymouth, the like mum moves back across to Plymouth and brings Oliver with her, your brother. So how did that make things better, easier for you? Like, obviously you've gone from being in this boarding house with hundreds of other swimmers to you've got your mum and your brother back. How was that?
Yeah, so it was a big family move. Obviously all of us were out in Malaysia, that was our home. My brother went back for university when I went back for swimming, and my mum shortly after followed as well to be back in the UK. And once Oliver was done with the university, he made quite a bold choice to move down to Plymouth, so that he could be around me, because I mean, you remember me at 18, I was a bit of a, not a liability, but because I was so driven to the sport. I couldn't cook, I didn't know how to clean, all these things that you used to have to learn when you leave home. He kind of moved in with me and made sure I was being looked after. And I mean, poor guy, he was driving me to training every single day for about 2 years, because I never learned how to drive. So he was he was always there, being a big brother. And it was good fun. Like to be able to like bring the family into the journey was brilliant. And then my mum, so when I ended up leaving Plymouth, my mum moved down to Plymouth. So Plymouth is still very much part of our life and part of our home. So
yeah, no, definitely. I know I bumped into your mum having a coffee the other day. So yeah, definitely still a big part of the Plymouth community. And then from Plymouth, you moved to Turkey.
Yeah.
And ended up being with the energy standard setup, and obviously being coached by James Gibson. So how did that come about? How was it's a big decision. Like you said, you've made one massive move from your home in Malaysia to Plymouth to do it again.
Yeah.
How did that come about? And
so it all started post Olympics in 2016. I went off and did some traveling, some racing, and came back late November. And it was almost like my first session back in Plymouth. John sat me down and said, look, he's got a new job role in Ireland, and he's probably going to take it. And I was a bit like, oh wow, this is so I'm losing my coach. This is not so good. But very fortunately, the same weekend that John told me, James Gibson, who I worked with on the international scene for about 4 years prior, he announced that he's taking up this new job role in Turkey as part of Energy Standard's head coach, and he's recruiting a couple of swimmers to come across there and train and live as they start to prepare for the ISL, International Swimming League. And it came at the best time, because at that point I was considering where I could go, and he said, come out to Turkey, have a look, see what you think. And I did that, and sure enough, it's a beautiful place here. Blue skies, amazing hotel, like it's a dream to live here. And we started that journey, and that's where I started my work with Marco and James. Marco being my strength coach, James being my swimming coach. And that was really, I mean, the timing of that was almost perfect. I started working with them end of January, and just did some brilliant work together. And I still class them as my favorite coaches. James being a completely unique coach in terms of working with elite athletes, the older guys being able to give us freedom, flexibility, but also kind of nudge us in the right direction. And Marco being such a brilliant mind when it comes to understanding what the body needs and how to improve it. So when I started working there, things were brilliant. And 6 months later, that's where I won my first gold. So it was kind of like it solidified my place with this team. And it was a brilliant time to start. So I was based there in Turkey with the team for about 4 years. And then, as I mentioned before, it was closed down during COVID, and I moved back to Bath to train Mark Skimmings for about 2 years. And then as the world starts to open up again, I took the opportunity to move back with Marco which has ended up winning ourselves another world championship title. So there we go.
Yeah, no, brilliant. And what you say obviously with Gibbo, he's, you class him as your favorite coach. What was it about James that was so different to maybe what you had with John and Lindsay before, that made him really stand out to you as someone who got the best out of you?
Well, so I think a lot of things changed, like from that Plymouth program into Turkey. Plymouth being more of a school system program to working with James, which is very much an elite athlete program, maybe 10 to 15 swimmers max. But in terms of the way James works, he's always been very individualized for the athlete. So, he can come into a session with James and there'll be 6 athletes, 1 coach, but there'll be 6 sessions, because every single swimmer has something different going for them, whether it be a completely different, physiological aspect we're working on, or technical, or, my meters in the water is very low compared to others. So he has to modify everything. And so he'll have these 6 sessions written, and he will deliver these sessions as if he's working one-to-one with you. So even though he's got a stopwatch going for someone in that side of the pool, he's still watching you and delivering feedback in terms of your technique. And with James, he was world champion in the 50 breast. So he's been through it. He understands it. He knows the intricacies of being, in your mid to late 20s. Some people even older, but being able to be more of a teammate and to guide you through the process rather than dictate what you have to do. He applies and allows the athletes to come to him and to work together, which is something I think is really important in terms of keeping the motivation and keeping the internal drive, because as soon as you start to become someone who tells the athletes what they have to do, that's when swimmers might lose their motivation, or they might not have that inner drive to do so well. So I even though I've been self-coaching for the past 2 months, everything was kind of based off of how he worked and what he would deliver. Also taking bits I've learned from all my other coaches in the past, but I rate him as my coaching mentor in the pool. So
cool. No, I mean, I love James. I think he's a brilliant coach, and not only a brilliant coach, he's he's just a decent person as well. Do you know what I mean? He's just a great guy. No, definitely, it's definitely worked out. You two being together. And then the other thing I just wanted to touch on with Turkey, and that first part of Turkey, where the ISL and the energy standard was on. How was the team aspect of it? How did that motivate you? Because obviously, from Plymouth, you only really had Ruta, who was on a world-class stage the same as you were. So how did that team of then being with 15, 16 people who were all, Olympians and world finalists, how did that take your gear up and keep you motivated?
Yeah, so it was quite a big change, because when you're joining in, suddenly your teammates with Chad Leclerc, who's world famous, always has been since I was a young swimmer. Sarah Shostrom, who the queen of sprinting. And quite a lot of people who are just big names and also big personalities. And I think when you put all these people together, suddenly the amount that you do, because the entire career I've had, like from the start, has always been about the effort you put in the sport, inside and outside of the water. So I always thought I was putting in a lot more than some people around me. Like, obviously not everyone, because there's a lot of people who do put in a lot of effort into the sport as well. But I was always very fixated on my sport all the time. So when you're put into a team of everyone like this, you start to see how all these similar traits come together in terms of the obsession with the sport, the competitiveness, the drive, all these traits that kind of make up an elite athlete. It was just in abundance when we were together as a team. Everyone had their strengths, everyone had their weaknesses, but put it all together and you create this kind of team that's really solid. And you can never take your foot off the gas, because there's always people to compete against. There's always people wanting to make you do well, or and just learning the whole mindset situation. Like, suddenly, actually, this is probably a good point. I remember I was in a minibus with the likes of Chad and Sarah and Cameron Vandenberg, and I just remember looking around and being like, Jesus, all these guys have won Olympic medals, they're world champions, they're done world records. What have I done? Like, I've not. I've got a few medals at Europeans and Commonwealths, but in reality, like, I haven't achieved anything. And it was kind of off the back of that, I was thinking, like, geez, I really need to pull something together. And that was kind of the point where I said, like, I'm going to be on the podium this year at World Champs. And that was 2017. So in that aspect, it really does, it kind of normalizes the situation. Like, suddenly winning a world's medal doesn't seem that daunting, because you're surrounded by people who have done it multiple times. So that really helped me to kind of take that step on and go from a good international swimmer to being someone that can compete for medals at the major meets.
Brilliant. Yeah, and you did have an unbelievable team. Obviously, we'll briefly mention the ISL. Won season 1, finalists in season 2, and then obviously won season 3. What for you personally, what did you make of the ISL? What was your opinion of the whole thing?
Well, the first year everyone was still trying to get their heads around it, start to, I remember this very start, people weren't kind of invested as much as they were the next 2 years, only because it was new and people didn't quite understand the impact it was going to have. So that was a brilliant experience, going through and winning the first year, because Energy Standard being the original team, that Constantine was first supporting and then bringing into ISL. So to win that was kind of like, maybe we were favored to win, but it was still a tough competition. Second year, to miss out on the win was a bit of like okay, the world is stepping up. They're starting to understand, like, they want to do better. I didn't really have much of an influence in that second season. I wasn't swimming very well. I wasn't racing much. That third year after Olympics was really a special experience, to have this team that was my family for 4 or 5 years, plus the additional group of people that come in, to be racing together with them for 2 or 3 months, making it through round by round, week by week, to the point where you get to the final, and all these like close calls, and really everyone was so in the moment, just into it, and it paid off. And that was one of these things, like, especially after this Olympics, it really helped to bring my faith back into the sport and find some enjoyment in it. And it was special again to win.
Definitely. And then we'll talk very, very briefly your sort of pit stop move into Bath, obviously with COVID and everything that affected the whole world. How did the move to Bath come about? And obviously Mark Skimmins, a brilliant coach, been there many years, and a brilliant person as well. How was that relationship?
So with that move, it was very last minute. I remember I was here in Turkey doing my own training about the 18th of December. I got back on the 19th. We found out that as of the 1st of January, there's no more energy standard for whatever reasons. So that put me in a position where like I had to find a new pool, new coach, new home within 2 weeks. And so with the help of Bro Swimming, like they put me in contact with Mark, and we had a few conversations, and within 2 weeks I started in Bath. And obviously COVID times, everything was strange. Like we had protocols in place, we were in lockdown, we couldn't choose when we trained, we were given certain times. And I got injured my first couple of weeks there. I got a really bad back injury that first month. So I look back and I'm like, Jesus, Mark, he had to deal with a fresh swimmer coming in, hadn't really met before, straight into an injury, like 4 or 5 weeks out of the water. And he did such a brilliant job in terms of adapting things and working with me and just being present and bringing me to the pool each day. Like, because when you start Olympic cycle with an injury, that really hurts your motivation.
Yeah.
But he just did the ability of just brings me back to the water, gets me in the water, and just so we can get ourselves through to the position where you can move on. But I think me and Mark, we had a very similar way of thinking in terms of the way we train, way I want to swim as the way he wants to coach, and we had this brilliant relationship going right through to the Olympics. And I remember I was very disappointed that I didn't get a medal at the Olympics, because I thought for the effort we put in that year, we should have gone home with something.
Yeah.
I remember being obviously hurt personally, but also hurt because this team who took me in and did such a good job to keep me going, I couldn't bring them anything home. That was a bit painful, but then the ISL started shortly after, and that's when I saw the benefits of the training we put in starting to pay its dividends. And we went through the ISL process and did well there. And then shortly after, short course World Championships, and we won gold, which was, I think, the redemption of that experience, is to have a good swim come out of that. So yeah, and albeit it was brief, like I had to move back to Turkey because for many reasons, but like we had a brilliant thing going, and like I will credit a lot to him in terms of getting me through some of these periods. And I was short time, a year and a half we spent together, but he had to deal with so many different things and factors and stresses, and so yeah, he did an amazing job just to keep me in the water and prepare me for where I am right now.
Definitely. And look, we'll sort of talk about that now. And I know, obviously, through our friendship and my friendship with your brother Oliver, a little bit of what's gone on, but I know post Olympics, into Worlds and Christmassy sort of time, and you went through some pretty dark days, and I don't know if you'd call it depression or very close to that, but how did that come about, and do you want to talk about that a little bit? Or
yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to talk about, because obviously standing here right now, I'm better, and I feel good and happy and doing well. Maybe it's better I spring back to the start of my career, which is where probably everything stemmed from, because essentially swimming kind of stemmed from quite a sour place in my life. It was a tough time with a parents' divorce and multiple things that maybe I don't have to go too deep into, but
yeah,
swimming kind of started off on a bit of a back foot. Like I was escaping from a few things, and I used swimming as that opportunity out of it. And I didn't talk to anyone about it. I just kind of held on to this and just went with it. Yeah. And over the past 10 years, I've been through my fair episodes of anxiety and depression and all these bad places. Is never fun, but I was always in a good place, so I never really felt like I deserved to be struggling in a way. And like it almost made my career by having these things I had to deal with, because I was always chasing something better, and I was trying to improve things or trying to run away from certain things, which led me in its direction of becoming a professional swimmer. But obviously everything has its time where it has to come out, and I was putting this off so long and not dealing with it, not talking to anyone, which was wrong, but I had to learn for myself when the right time was. And so with the COVID situation and the Olympics, and then a lot of anxiety, like pre-Olympics, with isolation and not being where you want or around the right people, like because you're just I think a lot of people dealt with COVID in quite a bad way, which was hopefully those who have started to come out of it on the other side and start to realize that actually the world is opening up again. Yeah. But I think it put some people who were struggling into a worse place. So by underachieving in my Olympics this year, just threw me straight down into this really bad place of why am I swimming? And I was for sure in quite a bad depressive episode for a matter of months, and eventually led me to hitting what I would consider for myself as rock bottom, and not being anywhere nearly motivated or having no positive outlook. But almost as soon as I hit that, it was almost like the breath of fresh air. Like when you hit rock bottom, the only place you can go is up. And I was for the first time in many years, I had this clarity in terms of what I had to do and how to get myself out of this, because when you're going to come back out of it, in no way do you want to put yourself back in a position which has led you to have these struggles. So that's what's led me on to being a bit more open, being able to speak about it with friends or family, and in doing so, like actually, like starting the conversation has been amazing, to be able to share your thoughts or your struggles, and then actually people would come back and say like, well, actually I've had to deal with this, and it's been really insightful and positive to be able to open up about it a bit more. And it's just kind of I think the reason I put myself in that position was because swimming takes up such a big part of your life, and it's very heavy on your lifestyle. You can't see certain people. There's many restrictions, and I wasn't living a very enjoyable life. I was living to swim. So these past couple of months, I've really managed to look inside myself, like decide like what it is that I want to do, and how do I want to behave, and what do I want out of life, which has actually made me be a bit more true to myself, because I've always been quite an introspective person, and probably one big thing that we haven't touched on yet is the mindset that I've always had in terms of the law of attraction belief in swimming. The law of you almost put yourself in the position of being where you want to be, and you trust your intuition, you listen to yourself, and you make these choices based on what you fundamentally believe is true, or what you believe is going to take you to this place that you want to be. And that was really how I behaved at the first 6 years of my career. I was very, very intuitive in terms of listening to myself, and what my body needs, what my head needs, and what's going to make me better. And then swimming takes over, and then the pressures of being a successful athlete take over, and suddenly it's not intuitive. It's you're making these decisions based on external forces act upon you. And I think I spent a couple of years just falling into this trap of not doing things for the right reason, not expressing things the way I need to. So I've really had the pleasure of the past couple of months to be able to get back to the state that I believe in, the law of believing in what's right and manifesting things, and because that has ended up being, I think, when you're true to yourself, you're just so much more abundant in energy and your belief system. Like you can just align things much better.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, like these more darker traits that a lot of people have to deal with, it clouds this ability to do so. So yeah, to be able to come out of it on the other side, and especially to be taking a medal back is something very special, because I don't know if I've touched on it yet, but like these 8 months ago was a real tough time for me. Worst place I've been in for easily my life. It was just a tough time.
Yeah.
But the team that have been around me, so Mark Skimmings, who just kept me coming back into the water, not even for anything too intense, just come in when you need to, when you feel is right. That put me in a position where I was like, okay, I'm ready to take a step on. And then I moved back to Turkey to train with Marco, who, as a gym coach, he is so emotionally invested into our situation, our program, and our belief. I think, I think Marco believed in me far much more than I believed in myself.
Yeah.
But that was facilitated by James, who kind of managed to get me out to Turkey again, and Gloria, the hotel, who really allowed me to move back to somewhere where I'm happy and where I can love the sport. So that's kind of why I say, like, this gold medal that I got a couple of days ago was the product of their belief in me, and it was much more of a team effort than an individual goal or anything, because without that support network and without the people who were around to get me through this, like, maybe I'd be signing off from swimming and moving on to something else. But I still love the sport, and that's the thing, is like, I still want to be around. I want to get through these situations and move on to better things. So it's a little insight.
No, and I think you're right. It's the more you can be open about it, and the more you can now talk about it, the more of the weight is lifted, the more of the sort of, you allow a bit more of the light in. And like you said before, like talking to people who you maybe didn't know were going through things, and then you find out they've had episodes, and I think it's a massive thing. And I think more so, I don't think I'm wrong in saying more so in men. There's the classic old man up and all this sort of stuff, but I think it's definitely harder as a male. It's harder to express that. Actually, do you know what? I am struggling, and I do need to go through something, and I do need to speak to someone about what's going on, and just get sort of like that fog removed from what is the right decision to make anyway. Yeah,
like, because back in December we were going out for just meetups every now and then, and like there was almost like a understanding that both of us would probably need to speak about something, but it's really hard to bridge that gap, especially when you commit to something. And it's easy when you come out the other side to maybe say, like, it's okay to speak about it, but it's hard to really get someone to be like okay with just saying, like, look, I'm struggling, can I talk about it? And it's a shame, because the breath of fresh air afterwards, when you can have these conversations, I think is I mean, it makes you realize, like, why do you put yourself through that? Why do you have to go through that in the first place? But yeah, I mean, that's why I feel okay talking about it now, because, you know, I hid it so much in the past from everyone that, you know, I only suffocated myself. Whereas now, like, it's opened up more conversations with friends and family that, you know, I didn't realize were there. So.
No, well, I mean, it's brilliant, and you know, on a personal point, I'm incredibly proud of you, mate. So I'll add that in there. Right, let's talk about stuff that's coming up. I know we touched on it briefly, but you got commies in a couple of weeks now. What's your sort of hopes, dreams? What are you hoping might come off the back of the gold medal at Worlds? What's Ben Proud's dream?
This is touching it earlier, but like this Commonwealth Games this year is more it's my legacy meet in a way. It's to finish off an 8-year career being in the international stage. To start it, because when I was 19, I won 2 golds, and I consider myself quite lucky to have done so.
Yeah,
I really just want to drive home that, you know, I've been working this whole time, and, you know, I can come back and win it 8 years later. Obviously, there's some real competition. Some guys in the fly and the free who have really stepped on this year. Haven't made it simple at all.
Yeah,
and I'm in a very dangerous position not to get too happy with my achievements last week, because, you know, there are people always there attacking you. So, and then, you know, this is a bit of a strange year. Like, COVID's coming to an end, and, you know, we only have 2 more years to the Olympics. I'm sticking around to Paris for sure. That is something I've always believed in. And, you know, based on what's happened the past year, I'm going to keep doing what I do if I love it. And, you know, as soon as I stop loving it, and I believe that's, if that's something I believe in fully, that's when I can say that I'm going to walk away. But I won't let a negative aspect of my life take me away from something I love. So brilliant. I'll keep.
Mate, that's brilliant to hear. All right, so we're going to finish with the last 3 little bits I've done on every podcast so far.
Yep.
The first bit is I gave you a heads up on this. Just asked you to pick 3 songs that have a meaning, have some kind of resonance to you. What are those songs? What are the ones you've picked? So
the first one is more appropriate for the past week, because this was like, I hadn't really heard the song before, and I listened to it when I arrived at Budapest about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah,
and it's "I'm Alive" by Natty and the Rebel Ship. You can look it up later. It's not something I've heard before. It was really like it's a feel-good song. Like, it's a bit more on the reggae terms, but when I listened to it, I was just like, you know what? I just feel fucking grateful to be around, to be alive, to be, you know, doing what I do. So I would listen to the song every time I started my process to go racing. Every time I would be about to sit down to do my pre-pull, this would be a song I listen to. And you just, like, it fills you with this just real strong positive energy that, you know, I think I credit it to being in a good place when I got up to race.
Yeah. Brilliant.
The next one is one that's been around for a long time. It's been a special song by John Butler. It's called Ocean, and it's basically this 10-minute journey of John Butler and his guitar, and it's absolutely phenomenal to watch, to listen to, and you can tell how personal it is to him. And I've listened to some interviews about speaking about it, and it's it's basically his life's journey, and it's the one song he's had for years throughout his entire career as being a musician. And it's changed, it's adapted, he's added more to it, he's taken things away. It's real. It's real.
Yeah.
It's not just a song he wrote and then plays and then performs. It's something that he lives, he breathes, he's a part of it. If you watch him on YouTube performing the song, there's not a single word in it. It's just him and the guitar, and it takes me through a journey every time I listen to it. It takes me through, good, bad, ugly, motivational. Like and it's been something I've been listening to since 2013, 2014. On and off, it sets me in the right direction. Because and the next one I couldn't pinpoint the third song, because I have to give credit to my favorite band, which is Fat Freddy's Drop, a New Zealand band. They're a group of 7 or 8 people who they're an improv band. They came together as a group, and they produce these songs, and they go through these concerts, and they, again, a bit like John Butler and Ocean.
Yeah.
Every song is a product of the moment, like, what feels good, what feels right. And I think there's real positive energy that comes from listening to them. And they've got many songs that I would class as my favorites. Wandering Eye is a song that is probably the most recognizable, but you can listen to, they have an hour-long session called Lock-In on YouTube, which is basically them acoustic, and it's just them going through the motions and playing these songs that you can tell they love.
Yeah.
And Fat Freddy's Drop have been, so with my career spanning back to 2011, the law of attraction, which I touched on very briefly, was a big part of my belief system in terms of what I'm going to achieve and how to do it. And music helps me to facilitate the right frame of mind. And Fat Freddy's Drop has always been my go-to in terms of it takes me on these journeys, and it brings me into the right frame of mind to be able to get that. You have to really understand yourself in order to move on and do things to be successful. And you really have to have that intrinsic belief. And so when I listen to their music, and it's obviously different for everyone, but it brings me into a place where I know what's true. I can get those feelings of gratitude and the feelings of inspiration that show me the direction I'm about to head in. They show, what I want to achieve next, or what I want to do next as a person, as a swimmer.
Yeah.
So Fat Freddy's Drop is song number 3, but it's like more than just one song. Got many positive memories from them.
Brilliant. No, they're great. I'll definitely be looking some of those up later. The next bit, now I haven't prepped you for this at all. I'm going to ask you 3 would you rather questions, and I just want you to give me the answer that comes to you off the top of your head.
Pressure.
So, would you rather live home or away?
Away.
Okay. Would you rather eat sweet or savory?
Savory. I don't know. I've got a big sweet tooth, so this is big mouth last night. Chocolate is my go-to, but I could never turn away a good pizza or sushi or something like savory, I think.
Okay. And the last one, would you rather go back to being Ben Proud at 10, but with your current mind, or have 10 million popped into your bank account as we speak?
Oh, that's awful. I would take the 10 million. This journey has been intense. It's been a roller coaster.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could do it again. I don't know if I could go through everything in the right way. Although you can get some insider knowledge, but I'm really happy to be in the position I'm in and to have had the journey I've had. The good, the bad, the ugly. It's all part of it, and my belief in life is you go through these ups and downs, and that's just the nature of the law of nature. But I think being in the present moment with an optimistic future is how people should be, and never have a regret as to something happened, because that tends to put you in a position and it takes you down your natural life. But so long as you are true to yourself as much as you can be, then that's the best way to live.
Brilliant. And then Ben, the last bit is I guess over to you, because I asked you to come up with two questions that either you want to know about me or you've never asked me before, even though we've known each other a long time. So over to you.
All right, I'm going to go quite deep with you.
Okay.
What's the proudest thing you have about yourself, or the proudest trait, or the something that you're like, this is me, I'm Matt Cross, I would never change this about myself?
Okay. I would say probably how much I care about the people that matter most to me. I'm very, I'd do anything for anyone. I'd give my last penny to anyone if it meant they were okay, and regardless of what it meant for me. So I think my ability to just care about everyone that is important to me in my life is probably what I'm proudest of.
I thought you'd go down that route. You've always been a solid, whenever you're around, you're there, you're present, and I think everyone who knows you well enough to be friends with you, that's something they probably always say is a great trait. You're a great friend. Next one, what is the next 3 years going to look like for you? 4 years.
Okay, so got a meeting tomorrow to iron out a couple of things. So hopefully in September, doing a master's degree. I'm not sure if I'm going to roll into sports coaching or sports psychology yet, or if I'm potentially going to do both, which is a little bit daunting because I never did an undergrad degree, but obviously through my years and years of experience now, I qualify as having worked as a graduate level. So that's big. Obviously the podcast is up and running now. I'd love to take this further. I really enjoyed doing it. I think I'm quite good at talking shit on camera, so that's always a positive. And then the next thing is I'm probably gonna be off deck within the next 4 years, I would say. I'm only 32, but I've been coaching for 15 years already. So I think probably another 2 or 3 years while I do my master's, I'll carry on. But the plan is to start a business with a former colleague of mine, someone who Callum Doyle. The plan is to start a business with him looking at coach welfare. Right. So going more into, obviously with everything that's gone on and the negativity around the world and things, I think people forget that the coach goes through the 4-year Olympic cycle and journey and feels the disappointment as well. And there's lots of support for athletes, but maybe not quite so much for the coaches, particularly in Olympic sports. You know, I think football's got the money behind it to maybe offer a little bit more, same with rugby and cricket, but the Olympic sports, you know, especially someone at your little club in Manchester that's maybe got this exceptional kid that's going to make the Olympics and then misses out. I think, yeah, there's a lot to be said about how the coaches are looked after, and I see my place much. I think I'm much more valuable off the poolside than I am on it. So that's my. But I don't think I'll ever leave sport behind, and swimming will always be around. That's for sure.
That's brilliant. I think that's something that, you know, it's hard for the athlete to see because it's always about the athlete. They take the limelight and they take the attention. So I think that's a really positive thing to be able to offer some help to those who might need it but who don't have access to it. And that's I can see that. I can see that from you. It's
brilliant. Hopefully.
Yeah.
I've got to do the degree first. That might wear me out, and I might end up doing what you've done and just disappear to Turkey or something for a couple of years.
Well, come on, I need a coach. So
well, we'll see. The offer's there, mate. You know, you can always give me a call if you need a pair of eyes to come out and watch. You know that.
Yeah.
Well, look, Ben, that brings us to the end. Thank you so much for doing it. You know, I appreciate you being as honest as you have been, and you know, I know you're busy, but taking what is now like an hour and a half to do this. So yeah, I really appreciate you doing this, and you know, look forward to seeing you this weekend because I know you're popping back to Plymouth. So I'll definitely pop over and have a coffee with you and your mum while you're back. And
yeah, I'll be seeing you soon. But for the listeners or anyone who's made it this far, like congratulations. It was a long talk, so I hope they have enjoyed it.
I'm sure there's lots of people around the world that are interested in you, Matt, and they'll have listened all the way through to this. So yeah, Ben, thank you again. And as Ben said, thank you to everyone that's listened, whether it be on Spotify or watched our faces on YouTube as we've sort of stared at a camera and spoke to a microphone. Just a really quick shout out to the sponsors, Buzz Physique. I am wearing one of their hoodies at the moment. They're a gym wear company based down in Plymouth. Doing really well. If you use code MAT10 on www.buzzphysique.co.uk, you get yourself 10% off your order there. So massive thank you to them for being involved. Ben, thank you very much, mate. We'll call it a day there. And yeah, really appreciate it, and good luck for commies.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
See you soon.
See you soon. Cheers, Matt.
Thanks for listening to Behind the Stats with Matt Cross, sponsored by Buzz Physique. Go to buzzphysi.co.uk and use the code MAT10 to apply 10% off your orders. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. In the meantime, keep up with the show on Twitter at @behind_Matt and on Instagram at BehindTheStatsWithMatt. Until next time.